Hey, what's going on? It's Craig Bennett, aka Cash Cake, here with DFSArmy, and I'm here for another NBA First Look podcast for Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. We got a nice 6-game slate on tap. It's a lot bigger usually for Tuesdays. Usually we got a 3 or 4 gamer, so really like that. These are perfect size slates for DFS. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you know when I upload these videos. I'm going to continue to put out videos like this if they provide you value. So with that, let's just dive right into this and talk about today's 6-game slate. All right, like always, I will be going through this and talking about injury news that we have. I'll go and talk about DraftKings and FanDuel pricing. If there's anyone that I think that stands out on FanDuel, I will definitely mention them as pricing wise. And we'll just go through and build another sample lineup here for DraftKings. And again, if there's any outliers on FanDuel, we'll talk about both of them and we'll see what it looks like this morning. So first game, Toronto at Orlando, 215 over under. Toronto favored by 6. Big news still, OG Anunoby is still out. Norman Powell is questionable. McCall's been out for a while, so that doesn't really change anything. And then on the Orlando side, Carter Williams is still out. So that's not really going to change anything. We're still going to get a lot of Cole Anthony. So the big news we're waiting on is Norman Powell, because that will change up a lot over on the Toronto side. But let's look at the Toronto pricing over here on DraftKings. Pascal Siakam, 7,700 on DraftKings, 8,300 on FanDuel. Kyle Lowry, 7,300 on DraftKings, 7,500 on FanDuel. Van Fleet, 7,400 on DraftKings. He is priced at 8,800 on FanDuel. Big pricing discrepancy there. Now, he had a rough game last game. These two teams played against each other just 2 days ago. Like I said, NBA's been doing this a lot because of the COVID going on. And he really struggled here. He only scored 19 fantasy points. And it was actually Siakam and Lowry that did most of the damage here. Lowry scored 47 fantasy points here. Don't know if you watched this game, but Aaron Gordon actually kind of laid his shoulder into him because it was a deal that they had in the bubble. So I think that kind of motivated Lowry and was like, I'm going to take it to you guys now. You're going to sit there and give me a cheap shot because you thought I gave you a cheap shot going to the hoop in the bubble, which hurt Aaron Gordon those last 4 games and he couldn't play. And speaking of Aaron Gordon, he is out for like 4 to 6 weeks. So he did get hurt ankle, not because Kyle Lowry, but just he did get hurt. So he is out for a while here. So again, on the Toronto side, I think going back to Fred VanVleet is a great move on DraftKings because I think a lot of people just go to Lowry. They'll look at that last game. Fred VanVleet, at pricing right now, Fred VanVleet and Lowry are in play regardless if Powell plays. If Powell comes back, he's 6,400 on DraftKings, 6,400 on FanDuel. I think he becomes a great play. He was super aggressive when he was back before, and I think he's going to continue that, even though he's, priced, fairly. He was putting up 41, 43, 32, 31 fantasy points over the last 4 massive minutes. Again, with no OG, they would rather have Powell in there than start some of these other guys like Davis. Now, if Powell's out, then we just go right back to Lowry, VanVleet, and Siakam. All 3 are in play. I wouldn't play all 3 at price. I would play 2 of the 3, but I wouldn't play all 3. So I would make a rule for that if we get Powell out. If Powell is in, though, I would focus on playing Powell, maybe Powell and VanVleet, or Powell and Lowry or something like that. I think it's going to hurt Siakam a little bit because those shots aren't going to be as there because Powell's pretty aggressive with the ball. So Siakam's not going to be able to just do whatever he wants here. So need that news on Powell. On FanDuel, though, Lowry is still the way to go at 7,500. He's $1,300 cheaper than a VanVleet over there. But on DraftKings, I would rather go VanVleet. And then Powell, again, same price on both sides. We'd rather go there. And then I don't really want any of these other guys. If we do get Powell out, you can look at a Davis, or in deep GPPs, you can look at a wannabe. But that's about it. I wouldn't really touch this. So we really need the Powell news before we can move on here. Boucher here, again, just not getting the minutes. Must have did something to Nick Nurse. I don't get it, but I can't play him until he starts getting minutes again, and who knows when that'll be. Over on the Toronto side, again, Gordon is out. I think it was like out 4 to 6 weeks is what the last thing I saw. with that ankle. I didn't really see the injury once it happened. It's one of those things for injuries like this. I know it's kind of off topic, but I broke my ankle when I played basketball at a young age, and I was able to still go play sports through high school. But I was in middle school, and I broke it, and I broke the tibia and fibia, and both the bones were sticking out my leg. And so it's one of those things where you get a compound fracture and you can remember it. I can't watch those injuries when I see them on TV. I got to look away still to this day, which is crazy because that happened a long, long time ago. But that's neither here nor there. Won't get into that. But again, with no Gordon, Vucevic is just going to shoot more here. He is 8,200 on DraftKings, 8,800 on FanDuel. I think he's a fantastic play here. And as we build through this, I think I'm going to put Vooch in this lineup here. And then I'm actually going to go, let me see here. I'm going to go back to Toronto. It's hard to tell what we're going to do with Toronto because we don't know what's going on. But I'm actually going to put Van Fleet in this lineup regardless and think he's going to get a bounce back game. And I think at that price, I just really like him. And like I said, you can play both of them. Maybe Powell's in there because we don't know. I'm just going to kind of leave him because I think Van Fleet is going to be in play regardless. So I don't want to jump the gun here and throw someone in there like that unless I know what's going on. And again, I'm just building a sample lineup. And since we don't know that news anyways, it's really kind of hard to make that decision. But again, Vooch with no Aaron Gordon, likes to have that ball in his hands. So I think it's a thing that, he's going to be an anchor in your lineups there at center. That's especially on DraftKings. It's too cheap at 8,200. 1.33 fantasy points per minute, 33 minutes a game, 28% usage rate. All that should climb up without him on the court. What we're probably going to do is see Kim Birch run into the starting lineup here. We're probably going to see more. Actually, no, Gary Clark could start here. It's probably going to be Gary Clark because Birch will back up Vooch, but they can still play. So it could be Birch or it could be Clark. I'll have to look closer, but it's going to be one of those guys. And they're stupid cheap, Kim Birch set 4,200 on DraftKings, 4,500 on FanDuel. I think he's just going to back up Vooch here. But I think Gary Clark's going to move into the starting lineup. He shoots a lot of threes. I remember played him a lot in the bubble. He's probably going to play mid-30s minutes. He's a 0.52 fantasy point minute per player for the year. So don't get too excited about playing. But if we can get someone at 3,300 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel, he's just a cheap guy that can play a lot. Probably more of a cash play than anything else. Evan Fournier, though, 6,300 on DraftKings, 6,400 on FanDuel. Again, more shots to go around with not Gordon there with the ball in his hands. Gordon plays a lot of ISO ball, I notice. When he gets a ball in his hands, he wants to back people down and uses athleticism. But, Fournier's a shooter, man. He moved that ball around. He's going to shoot. Cole Anthony at 5K on FanDuel, 5,500 on DraftKings. You can go there as well. Again, I think all this usage is going to pick up a little bit more. But for me, the most part, I think I'm looking at Vooch as my number one guy. For value, I would look at Clark more so in cash games. It's just, he's just not a big fantasy producer. He needs to hit those threes. And, I just, again, fine for cash games. I have a hard time going with him in tournaments as of right now. So I'm not going to get too excited about that. And then again, Cole Anthony, not really excited about that. Maybe it's Terrence Rollins off the bench, 5,300 on DraftKings, 4,700 on FanDuel. Maybe that's something interesting we can look at, but nobody that I'm dying to play. Let's head on over to the next game here, where we got the Clippers at Brooklyn. Pat Bev is still out. Nicholas Batum is still questionable. James Harden is probable. Again, he just had that rest. There was no injury or anything like that. Just what Steve Nash has been doing seems like he's been resting one of his big three and then playing the other two big minutes and kind of doing it that way, which is interesting. And I hope he continues to go down that path for some games because it makes it easier for fantasy purposes than when all three play. But as of right now, I think all three are going to play against the Clippers. I think they do that more against games that they think they can win, even though their defense is so bad and they need court time together. I mean, it's just their defense is so bad. So Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, 9,200 and 8,900. I actually like them here. In a game that has a massive 242.5 over under. It's Clippers favored by 1.5. There's just going to be a lot of fantasy points here. So Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, got a lot of studs on this slate. Kawhi Leonard is 9,600 on FanDuel. Paul George 8,400 on FanDuel. It's real cheap. So on FanDuel, I love that price. I would play a lot of him. But even here on DraftKings, I think 8,900. He's squarely in play here. I think you could play both of them together, but on a slate this size, very rarely when they're both around 9K and you want like tournament value out of them, you need like 55 plus out of both of them. And I don't think that happens. One might get you 40 and the other one might get you 50 something, but I don't think they both put up massive scores. So I don't personally think I would play them together. But, with Pat Bev out, Jackson's been starting. He's 5,100 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. The usage isn't going to be there, but, last two games, 26 and 25 minutes with both those guys back, 30 and 24 fantasy points. So there's worse places to go and a good matchup. So I don't mind looking at him, but again, it's still going to be the big two that are taking everything. Ibaka, interesting spot here. If Batum sits, he's not been great. 6,400 on FanDuel, 6K on DraftKings, 23, 31, 36, 30. Again, though, we always say it, bigs against Brooklyn. So if you want to look there and play him, I don't think it's a bad idea. Zubac, 5,100 on DraftKings. He is priced at 4,800 on FanDuel. It's just minutes with me. 23, 22, 21, 21 minutes, 22, 13, and 22 fantasy points. The guy's over a fantasy point per minute producer. He just doesn't get a lot of minutes. Maybe he gets more minutes now to go up against Jordan, but at the same time, Brooklyn's been playing a lot of Jeff Green, a smaller lineup as well when Jordan's not on the court, and they do just fine. So we could see lineups like that where it's just really hard to trust his minutes. So I can't look there. Sweet Lou just doesn't get enough minutes for me. 4,500 on DraftKings, 5K on FanDuel, 22, 17, 28. That's 28, though. We didn't have no Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, but 19 and 17 fantasy points, but the minutes just aren't there for him. But on DraftKings, I guess you could consider him at 4,500. I don't really want to pay 5K for Lou Williams, especially when he's in a point guard position for someone that's going to get low 20s minutes. If that, he might even get 20. So just tournament option only. But that's about it. I would look at the big two, maybe some Ibaka, some Jackson. In deep tournaments, maybe you want to look at, Morris off the bench, but he hasn't been fantastic. They did start old Pat 3,500 when Batum was out. Again, he's one of those like cash play fillers, kind of like Clark is, 3,500. So if you want to look like a guy like that in cash games, if he starts again, I wouldn't play him in tournaments because I don't think there's a bunch of upside, but he's only going to be viable if Batum is out. Over on the Brooklyn side, like I said, all three are healthy. All three should play this game. Again, it's going to be hard to play any of them because of this. Durant 10-9. Harden 10-9 on DraftKings, Durant 10-1, and Irving 8-8. Over on FanDuel, Durant is 11-2. Wow, no thank you. Harden 10-5 and Irving 9-5. They are all so priced up at FanDuel, I don't think we can get to any of them, honestly. They got good defense there. I think the one guy I'm interested in on FanDuel, I think I would look at maybe play a Jeff Green. Jeff Green's 5,400 on DraftKings, but 5,100 on FanDuel. But as you can see, his minutes have been up over the last few games. And he put up 43 against Washington. But again, we didn't have any Harden in that game. I can't believe they lost that game, honestly. But 43, 28, 24, 21, those last four. So he's more interesting on FanDuel for me because you got to play two power forwards than he is on DraftKings. But just wanted to mention that. But again, when they're fully healthy here, Joe Harris is even priced up on DraftKings, 6K. He's 5K on FanDuel, so I think you can get to him on FanDuel. He's going to play mid-30s minutes. If his shot falls, he can get to that tag, but all these other guys are not going to be in play for me. And on DraftKings, it's rough. It really is rough to kind of figure out where you're going to go here with any of these guys. I mean, I guess if you're going to take a shot on one guy, it's probably Kyrie Irving just because of price, or DeAndre Jordan, 4,900. Again, at price on DraftKings, but as a whole, I don't like this team very much at all. Let's head on over to the next game where we got Memphis at Indiana. Memphis just played last night, but they kind of beat the crap out of the Spurs. Thanks, Ja Morant, for screwing up another great day on prop bets, but we still made a little bit of money, made a unit. So these guys didn't play super heavy minutes, the starters, because even though it's on a back-to-back 3 and 4, they've been resting forever, man. They were off for like 2 weeks. So the matchup isn't great against Indiana here. They're a good defensive team. And the injuries that we do have, Joval is questionable. It looks like Grayson Allen is questionable, and then Sean McDermott is questionable for Memphis. So if they did get Joval back, it would kill Tillman. So we just kind of have to see and wait for that news. But that would be the big thing there. You know, there'd be no more Tillman at all. And Tillman's 5,100 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel, 1.08 fantasy points per minute, 20. You know, he'll probably play 28 to 30 minutes. Didn't play a ton of minutes, still scored 30 fantasy points. I mean, he's squarely in play here if we have no Joval, even at price. We should have a closer game here. This is a 222 over-under with Indy favored by 5. So, again, I'm not too worried about tired legs or anything from Memphis, even on back-to-back. They're going to need some size, though, up against Turner and Sabonis. It's two of the bigger guys in the league when it comes to that front court for Indy. So, Gorgie Dang's been playing really well. 5,300 on FanDuel, 4,700 on DraftKings with no Joval. Minutes 24 and 27 over his last 2 games, 34 and 33 fantasy points. Did a lot of that on this last game due to kind of blowing him out, but I always like to mention Dang, he can get you there in a number of ways. He always has in his whole career if he's got some minutes. But Brandon Clark, if no Joval there, even if Joval's there, I think you could still play him. 6,400 on FanDuel, 6,200 on DraftKings. Ja Morant, 7,500 on DraftKings, 7,800 on FanDuel. Just tournaments only. Like I said, it's a pretty good defensive team. I think we got 2 games that we can look for some fantasy value from. But I don't know. I don't think we have to go there. All these guys on DraftKings are basically priced up when it comes to Kyle Anderson, Dang, Tillman. Like Tillman's in play if Joval's not there, but Ja Morant, is cheap enough where you can play him in tournaments. He's 1.29 fantasy points per minute, 33% usage rate. We just need some minutes out of him. 22 minutes last game, and it's just because they were beating the crap out of him. Put up 31 fantasy points. So maybe some people get off of him, and it's a great tournament play, and you can get on him where he's going to sniff, back up towards his average here. And get over 30. But just tournaments here. Joval's out. It's Clark and Tillman if you're going to consider cash game consideration. And I think that's both sides. It's just those guys for me. Over on the Indy side, it looks like Sabonis 8,700 and 9,100 on FanDuel. Expensive, but I think you can look at some of these Indy guys here. We don't have any LeVert still, no Warren. And it's a pace up playing against Memphis. So, Brogdon at 8,400 has been just super consistent. 7,900 on DraftKings. I think he's a really good cash game play. Turner at 6,800 on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. He's actually been a 1.17 fantasy points per minute for the season, which is hard to believe because he's a guy that it's just so hard to trust. As you can see, 21, 39, 25, 39. You can only play him in tournaments. I never like playing him at all. The X factor on this team lately has been Jeremy Lamb. 5,400 on DraftKings, 5,300 on FanDuel, 28, 27, 14, and 36. Minutes are definitely trending up. He can have a big game and put up a 40 burger anytime. So there's definitely meat left on the bone on both sides here. He's been about a fantasy point per minute for the season. We just need to see 30 minutes out of him. One thing I like about Jeremy Lamb is he is small forward eligible, so you could slide him into small forward. He's shooting guard over on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, small forward, which is sometimes a hard thing to fill. So I'll throw him in this lineup because I feel like that's a fair price. Justin Holiday, I always like him on FanDuel because he's 4,600, 4,900 on DraftKings. I just would rather play Lamb. 18, 15, 34, and 16. I think with Lamb coming back, it kind of hurts his upside. So more of just a FanDuel play because of that small forward position. Dougie McBuckets, 4,100 on FanDuel, 4,600 on DraftKings. Again, the minutes haven't really been there since Lamb's been back. 17, 18, 34, and 3 fantasy points. So with Lamb back in the rotation, I think I'm only focusing on Lamb at price, and then Brogdon, and then Sabonis. And the only reason Sabonis is 3 on that list for me is just because he's super expensive. He can put up a big game. He's 1.18 fantasy points per minute, averages 37 minutes. But Brogdon isn't far behind him, and he's a lot cheaper. So again, I think you could play either one of them if you wanted to. I just lean more Vooch over Sabonis for the $500 savings, but I would be cool if you wanted to play both of them together. Fine. One thing I like about Sabonis is he's power forward eligible, which is nice. So those are the 3 guys I'm going to focus on this team and just kind of move on. Next game, Portland at Washington. Another massive total, 241.5 over. Washington favored by 2. This should be a game where we can get some fantasy goodness out of this. I talked about it yesterday. I thought Portland would struggle against Milwaukee. We actually had the under in Enes Kanter's points and rebounds, and we cashed on that because they just got stomped last night. So they're on a back-to-back 3 and 4, but a great matchup against Washington. 10-7 for Lillard on DraftKings, 10-2 on FanDuel. I think you go right to back to the well here. This is a great game environment for him. Again, 27 minutes last night, only put up 36 fantasy points because of that blowout. And, so he didn't play a ton of minutes, and I think you can go right back to him and play here. Kanter as well. Kanter, again, struggled that last matchup. 25 minutes, put up 23 fantasy points. He had a great first quarter, but then Milwaukee made some adjustments and just kind of shut him down. But I think you can consider him in the matchup against Washington here. And again, he's a 1.28 fantasy points per minute, which is right there with Dame Lillard. The thing with, Lillard's playing damn near 40 minutes and Kanter's only playing 30. But I think you can go back to the well with Kanter here. As we faded him last night, I think this is a spot where you can play him. It's a massive total here, close spread. I'm actually going to throw him into this lineup and run a Vooch and a Kanter build here. Like I said, I like Kanter on FanDuel as well at 7K. I think that's too cheap in a way that we can kind of look at to get on him. I think, but Kanter Vooch is a great way to start your cash lineups. There's a lot of floor there, and there's a lot of upside in this matchup. So, Gary Trent Jr. is going to play massive minutes as well. He is 6K. I still think you can play him 5,800 on FanDuel. He's been an uptick in minutes with all these guys out, as we don't have Derek Jones Jr. as questionable. Now, if Jones Jr. comes back, maybe Trent sees a little bit down, but he's priced up. But again, I'm just going to go up to Kanter if I'm picking one guy from this team. Melo at 4,700 on DraftKings, 4,900 on FanDuel. If Derek Jones Jr. is back, the minutes really haven't been there the last 2 games, 18 and 17. They've been all going to Trent Jr. This matchup's going to be pace up, track meet with Beal, and we're going to get Westbrook. I'm not sure Melo's going to be able to keep up with these boys. So they're probably going to continue to go to guys like Trent or Derek Jones Jr. And if Jones Jr. plays 4,600 on DraftKings, it's an interesting price, but nobody that I love. Simmons at 4,300 on DraftKings. Another guy played a lot in Milwaukee because of that blowout. So 31's kind of an outlier, but he has been producing in these games, playing good minutes. So in a tournament, no problem going back to the Simons here. Little exploded, but don't expect this. Again, this is a blowout, got a lot of blowout run. Put up 47 fantasy points in 30 minutes. If you look at his last 3, 11, 0, and 10. Don't expect that at a guy's 3,100. Don't chase Little's big game here. But if Derek Jones Jr. is out and he gets the start, again, I don't mind playing anyone that's min price in your lineup. Just don't expect a 47 burger. But again, a total with this that's over 240, and if Jones Jr. is out, maybe Little will get some decent run, and that's a good price on both sides if you want to play him, but don't expect 47 fantasy points out of him. Lillard and Trent and Cantor are going to do work here, and it's not going to be little on the floor scoring with those guys on the bench because they're getting beat. And last guy we're going to talk about, Robert Covington, 4,900 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DraftKings. Again, I don't mind going right back to the well here. They could run some small ball too at times where they run him out at the 5. So just a tournament option though. Like, he's just not a guy that I like to focus on. 0.71 fantasy points per minute for the year. Again, Lillard, Cantor, Trent, and Simons. And then, like I said, a little if Derrick Jones Jr. is out as a cash play at that price. Let's go on the Washington side. Again, Bryant is still out. Neto is out as well, but Ish Smith is back. They're starting to get healthy again here. Bradley Beal at 9,900 on DraftKings. His price on FanDuel is 10.8, so he's a little expensive on FanDuel, but on DraftKings at 9.9, definitely playable. That's a good price, especially in this matchup. Russell Westbrook though at 9,100. Again, another fantastic price here, and he's been uber aggressive the last few games. Shot volume's up, put up 73 against Brooklyn. Before that, 41 and 42. He's a guy that we can consider here. Great matchup against Portland. Again, this should just ooze fantasy points. So this might be one of those things where we're like, let's throw Westbrook in this lineup over Paul George maybe. Let's just do that right now. Let's take Westbrook in here. Let's go back to Toronto. I know Van Fleet we can throw at shooting guard. Let's just try this out as we're going through. Go back to Washington side here. So I feel like if I was going to make a rule, I think I would want at least one guy on each side of this team on these teams. So I would make a rule where I want at least one Washington player, at least one Portland player in every one of my lineups if I was making 150. That's something that I would personally do as I'm making lineups. So if you want to keep that in consideration. Again, Rui's back, so they do have some more scoring, so it isn't just all Beal, and Westbrook. They've been back for a couple games now. Rui went up to 29 minutes, only put up 18 fantasy points. I don't think we're going to see massive points out of him, but 4,700 on FanDuel, a small forward position, which he could creep up to 30 minutes, which would be great. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get, but I would guess 28 to 30. 0.28 fantasy points for the year. He's not going to be a big usage guy because of those guys on the court. So more of a FanDuel play than a DraftKings play. Bertans, though, 4,700 on DraftKings. I think I prefer him more. He is only 4,300 on FanDuel at power forward. A guy that when his stroke is going, he can absolutely crush. Only went 4 for 13 against Brooklyn, 16 fantasy points. But, we've seen it in the past with Bertans. When he gets hot, he can just absolutely blow up a slate. So you better have him in your pool. And I can, on FanDuel, I can consider him in cash at that price. It's just too cheap at 4,300 at power forward. Really too cheap. DraftKings, though, at 4,700, tournaments only for me here. Ish Smith is going to play a little bit off the bench. He should play, mid to low 20s. He's about a fantasy point per minute. 4,500, though, not someone that I'm really looking forward to because I think they're going to have one of Beal or Westbrook on the court probably at all times. So it's kind of hard to trust him. And that's about it on this team. I don't really want to look at a Garrison Matthews or any of these guys, a Lopez. It's just no thank you. I think it's more Westbrook. That price is just too good on DraftKings. Like I said, you could run Beal as well if you want to run him over. But Westbrook's going to do a little bit of everything. Then Rui and Bertans are the two that I would look at. Really wouldn't look at any of these other guys. Mo Wagner, I guess, 4,800 on FanDuel, 3,800 on DraftKings is interesting. Put up 30 fantasy points in 21 minutes. He just needs to run. He's super aggressive, loves to shoot as well. So maybe if you're going to go cheap at center, he's interesting pivot off some of these other guys to make your lineup different. That has upside. Let's head to the next game. Boston at Golden State. We have a 226 over under. Boston favored by 2.5. Pritchard's still out for Boston. On the Golden State side, Draymond Green is probable. Eric Pascal's probable. James Wiseman is out. So If we look on the Boston side first, again, I'm sorry, Marcus Smart is out as well. He left with an injury. He's going to be out for a little while. That I think they said a couple weeks for him as well. I want to say it was a hamstring, but he got hurt that last game and is out. So that's just going to pull a couple of these other guys into play for us. But again, it's still going to be the Tatum, Brown, Walker show here. Again, Brad Stevens mentioned that Walker's not going to sniff over 30 for a while. So again, 28, 27, 24 minutes. I can't play him. 6,700 on DraftKings, a full fade. 5,700 on FanDuel makes it a little more interesting. Even though he's not going to be 30 minutes, he's a 1.12 fantasy points per minute. And if you can give me 28 to 30 minutes, he can get there at that price tag on FanDuel. So FanDuel only play full fade on DraftKings for Kemba Walker. Just too expensive. There's no meat left on the bone there at the minutes he's going to play. It's basically Brown and Tatum. And they're fair prices over here on DraftKings. 8,600 for Tatum on DraftKings. He's 9,500 on FanDuel, so way priced up on FanDuel. And then Brown, 7,800 on DraftKings, 8,700 on FanDuel. I think Brown's going to have to do a little bit more. No Smart out there. Play a little more defense. Already playing massive minutes. Same with Tatum. You know, they should be able to do what they want on this team. It's a great matchup against Golden State for both these guys. I think both of them are both in play. I don't know which one I would lean. I guess I would lean Brown, but it's tough. Or maybe play Brown on FanDuel and then play Tatum over here on DraftKings. But that's a real fair price for Tatum, especially this game staying close. And then again with no Smart, they have a lot of guys that can throw in here. It's not just going to be one guy that said, okay, Smart's out, let's plug in this one guy. Brad Stevens will mess with his rotations. We'll see more Jeff Teague. Naismith will play some more minutes. Javonte Green can come in there and play more minutes. Ojale can play more minutes. So there's not nobody that's like, okay, Smart's out, let's plug this guy in. I think just Brown and Tatum are just going to take more of the load. Not that Smart was taking a bunch of shots, but he was kind of the glue for that team defensively. So I'm just going to look at those guys and kind of move on. If you want to look at Daniel Tice at 5K on DraftKings, I like him better on FanDuel at 4,500. I don't mind playing him. He's about 0.9 fantasy point per minute, and if I can get 28 minutes out of him, he's interesting, but not on DraftKings. Tournaments only, and at that power forward position, I wouldn't play him at center. On Golden State side, again, we have Wiseman out. Draymond is probable. Pascal's probable as well. Curry 9,600 on DraftKings is expensive. Over on FanDuel, he is priced at 9,400. So again, a little too pricey for me. I think the guy we're going to look at with no Wiseman, I think Eric Pascal is a guy we can slide right into this lineup, and he's probably going to be a core play, being probable. He's just going to have to play more minutes with no Wiseman out there. They can run both Draymond and Pascal together out there. I don't think Steve Kerr is going to run Looney out there a lot. He's 3,400. He'd probably get the start, but I don't think the minutes are going to be massive. But he's a guy that can play, low 20 minutes. He's only a 0.85 fantasy point per player. So if you wanted to punt, I don't even mind playing if you wanted to play Looney and cash with Pascal. I like the Golden State cheap guys here. But I don't really like the price tag on Curry. Wiggins at 6,400 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. Don't really love that either in this matchup. Kelly Oubre, 5,500 on FanDuel. It's so hard to play him, but 5,700 on DraftKings. Again, tournaments only for a lot of these guys. Draymond Green, 4,900 on FanDuel. Too cheap. Minutes are there, but the production really hasn't been there. He is 4,900 on DraftKings. 20, 21, 27, 24 fantasy points. He's more just a leader than a fantasy producer these days. So I'm going to look for Pascal here. And if you wanted to play maybe some Looney in cash games at 3,400 on DraftKings and 3,900 on FanDuel, I think you can. On FanDuel, I wouldn't, though. I wouldn't waste my center position on Looney. But on DraftKings, if you wanted to punt one of these guys and go him, you could. But I like that we can run Pascal at forward at 3,500. And he's probably going to be a core play on both sides, honestly, at that price and the minutes that he should see. I think we're going to see, probably mid-20 minutes on him with no Wiseman there. So makes it an interesting play. I just don't think that Kerr's going to play Looney that much. So let's move on to the next game, the nightcap game here. Detroit at Utah. Good old Detroit, man. That game screwed a bunch of people yesterday. Some good lineups. I'm glad to see DraftKings and FanDuel stepping up to do the right thing and refund the guys money, because you couldn't have pivoted anybody. Even though we knew about it like 4 minutes before that game locked, you couldn't move any of your guys, so it didn't really matter. So NBA's got to do a better job at that. You can't. It's just ridiculous. Anyways, this game is sitting at a 217.5 over under. Very low over under here. Utah favored by 12.5. Detroit's going to struggle, ride the struggle bus in this game. I don't really want anyone from Detroit. If you're going to take anyone from Detroit in this game, maybe you take a stab at Jeremy Grant. They have a 103-point implied team total, and I just can't get excited about any of these plays. I don't like the matchup. Like, Jeremy Grant is 7K and 6,800 on FanDuel. Maybe on FanDuel at that price, but you still have to think about if this game gets ugly, Casey has no problem going the bench. Josh Jackson could be a very interesting tournament play if he gets minutes off the bench. Not so much on DraftKings at 4,900, but on FanDuel at 4,400. If it gets ugly, he has no problem running Josh Jackson out there, and he can put up fancy points. He's a 0.93 fantasy points per minute. And if that dude gets, 25 minutes, he's going to crush that tag. So I don't really want to play any of these starters. If you think this game's going to stay close, then yeah, these prices are extremely cheap. 7K for Jeremy Grant, 5,700 for Griffin. Ellington at 5K is a little pricey for me. I just can't get behind any of these Detroit guys on a slate like this when we have Portland and Washington that we can focus on, or maybe some of the cheap guys in Orlando, or, we got guys in Clipper. I just have a hard time going here. But if you think it stays close, Grant is the guy to focus on here. He's been a 1.10 fantasy points per minute, averaging 36 minutes a game. So this tag is way low for him. And I think if it does stay close, it's because Grant's having a big game. So take that into consideration when you're selecting lineups here. Let's go to the Utah side real quick. And when I looked at injuries, there's really no big injury consideration on both teams. So they're basically fully healthy. Mitchell at 76. Again, the one thing I worry about here is just when it comes to blowout a little bit. Mitchell 7,600 on DraftKings, 7,800 on FanDuel. I think you can still get there with him. If it's a close game, he's going to crush that tag, but I don't think it's someone that I would go to in cash games. Rudy Gobert 7,200 on DraftKings. Yes, no problem there. Love that price. 9,100 on FanDuel. No way I'm paying that on FanDuel he should be able to dominate Plumlee, but with them fully back, Mitchell shoots a little bit more, doesn't run the pick and roll as much as Conley does. So those big games are more when Conley's in and Mitchell's out. But Rudy Gobert, 7,200. I have no problem playing him here at all at that price. It's just too cheap for him. Mike Conley at 6,400 on DraftKings, 7K on FanDuel. FanDuel's priced all these guys up. They're much better priced over in DraftKings. Bogdanovich, I don't like that price tag on DraftKings. 5,900 on DraftKings, 5,700 on FanDuel. When they're fully healthy, no thank you. Jordan Clarkson, again, is priced up to the point where you can play him in tournaments here at 5,800 on both sites, but nobody that I want to get super heavy on. But in tournaments, we've seen him put up 40 even when they have a full allotment of guys here. But like I said, Ingles is back as well. 4,500 on FanDuel. I don't mind going there on FanDuel. I think that's a fair price. Probably FanDuel, I'd probably look at Clarkson and Ingles. Royce O'Neal, 4,800 on FanDuel. He is 5,200 on DraftKings. DraftKings prices, it seems like their low-end guys are priced up a little bit, but their starters are down. So I look at Mitchell, Gobert, and Conley here on DraftKings. They're just too cheap here. But depends on your lineup construction. If you're playing a Vooch and Cantor, maybe you want to play a Gobert and Cantor, save you 1,000, and then you can get up, have 7,200 in this lineup to get up to somebody. Or maybe you don't want to play Van Fleet, and this will let you get up to a Paul George here for 1,000 more. Or if we see Norman Powell play, Powell I think is 6,400. Oh, we're a little bit short in this lineup because, as I say, I know he's a guard forward eligible as well. So lots of ways to go. If that game blows out, though, I don't think those guys get there, but they are cheap enough on DraftKings. I think they could get there regardless if they blew them out in the first three quarters. I don't like to try to predict blowouts, but something that we can definitely look at. as we consider things. So with that, that's the quick 6-game breakdown. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button if you like videos like this, or if you want to see more videos like this. Hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on so you know when I update these videos. I'm going to try to do every day, knock out a first look. And watch out for Prize Picks videos today, and the prop bets. Again, we had a little bit of money last night in prop bets, but Morant kind of sucked the fun out of us for hitting a big day, but still profitable, up 17 units over the last week. So we're going to keep that train going. And if you're not a DFS Army member, I don't know what you're doing. Head on over there, sign up, use promo code CashKeg, save yourself 10%. We will have all the cheat sheets up, all the late breaking news as it hits. Projections are in. And again, NASCAR's coming up as well, man. So if you haven't check out my NASCAR promo video and see all the wins that we've had, and head on over. Check out some NASCAR, man. Daytona is NASCAR is one of the best sweats in daily fantasy, and our NASCAR team is second to none. So with that, I appreciate each and every one of you. I am Cash Keg. I'll see you on the flip side. Deuces.